The attack on our nation's capital on January 6, 2021, was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies. Lies by the defendant targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election. Since the attack on our Capitol, the Department of Justice has remained committed to ensuring accountability for those criminally responsible for what happened that day. This case is brought consistent with that commitment.
Sure. Joining me now, the great Julie Kelly, once again, author. Her Substack is called Declassified. I would recommend it. Okay, Julie, you know way more about this stuff than I do. Trump's facing 4 charges. I've read them. That doesn't sound good, but it does sound good that I saw Seditious Conspiracy was not on the list. I'm not the best reader in the world, but I didn't read that in there. That's a good thing, right?
Not yet. Because look, what's going to happen is Jack Smith is going to do what we just saw him do last week in the classified documents case, and that I've seen this DOJ do repeatedly in January 6 cases, and that is add what's called a superseding indictment. So I fully expect at some point that Jack Smith will add those 6 co-conspirators who were named in his indictment, will add those people to a new indictment with Donald Trump, adding charges as well. And I fully expect, and Jesse, I'll tell you, I read that indictment again today. I fully expect that Jack Smith will at some point charge Donald Trump with seditious conspiracy with these other co-conspirators and possibly additional ones as well.
Okay, well, that sounds very scary, seditious conspiracy. But for those who haven't watched you break that down on this show before, what is it and why should that be something that concerns Trump?
Well, because it really is something tantamount to treason, right? And this is a Civil War era statute that really has never been applied to American citizens. No American has ever been convicted of seditious conspiracy until the January 6th prosecution. So even if when Jack Smith brings that charge, if he does, which I believe that he will, then the Democrats can go to these certain states and argue that he should not be on the ballot because this is sedition, and anyone who is convicted or involved in trying to overthrow the government cannot run for public office. So I think that will be part of the calculus there for both Jack Smith and the Democrats. But the scariest part of that is what you and I have already talked about, and that is using the seditious conspiracy allegation as justification to deny Donald Trump's release. Now, I fully expect he will be released. Jack Smith could ask for pretrial detention on the obstruction charge because I've seen that happen. But even if he doesn't, he could go back after superseding indictments. He does bring seditious conspiracy or more conspiracy charges to ask the Judge Tanya Chutkin, who is no fan of Donald Trump, an Obama appointee. I've seen her in action, too, in Washington, D.C., ask Tanya Chutkin to deny Trump's release. And I'm sure she would be only so happy to accommodate Jack Smith.
Okay, well, that's a little concerning. Tanya Chutkin, Obama appointee? Has she been presiding over other January 6 cases? Do we have some kind of history on this woman, how she acts?
We sure do. First of all, she's the one who authored the opinion denying Trump's claims of executive privilege and allowing the January 6th committee to get their hands on all of his documents. There she is right there. She also has a record of handing down the harshest sentences in January 6 cases. In some instances, sentencing defendants to more time than even the Biden, Merrick Garland, Lisa Monaco DOJ have requested. And so she is a harsh partisan. I sat in one of her court hearings against a January 6th defendant who had been convicted of 4 misdemeanors. She sentenced him to a year in prison. He was in the Capitol for 11 minutes. She sentenced him to 12 months in prison and scolded him basically for supporting Donald Trump and for even going to trial, because most of the people who end up on her docket, most of the defendants plead guilty because they don't want to incur her wrath in court. And that is who Donald, I can't think of a judge who would be worse. Maybe Beryl Howell, than Tanya Chutkin.
Oh.
So that's bad news for Team Trump.
Okay, well, this is all awful news. Let's continue on with the awful news. What's going on with Atlanta, New York? Which indictment, if I'm a Donald Trump fan, which indictment should keep me up at night? Is it this one? It's this one, right?
It absolutely is this one, because you could get away with anything in this DC courthouse, as you and I have talked about, Jesse, really before any judge. As bad as Tanya Chutkin is, there's only degrees of improvement with the other judges, including Trump's judges who he appointed to that DC district court. That courthouse is nothing but a rubber stamp for DOJ and Jack Smith. The jury pool is made up of voters in a city that voted 93% for Joe Biden. And according to defense surveys, defense counsel surveys that they conducted in DC, most people in Washington view the events of January 6th very differently than the rest of the country. They view the events of January 6th the way that Jack Smith just described it, that it was just an unprecedented, deadly assault on our democracy, that they tried to overthrow the government that day and install Donald Trump as president. I mean, I've seen also these jurors, and it is impossible, even with the jury selection, to get a fair panel in place. So he's got everything going against him there. Furthermore, Jesse, every judge has denied change of venue motions in every single case, even for high-profile trials like the Proud Boys. So I'm sure the very first motion that Trump's legal team will ask for is a change of venue. I'm sure Tanya Chutkin will immediately deny that motion, and that will set the wheels, that will put everything in place. So this is by far poses the greatest danger to Donald Trump.
Okay, Julie, let's be bright and sunny if we can here for a moment. How does Trump stay out of prison? Because I don't see how that can't be the inevitable end of this whole thing. Communist juries, we already know about the judge. He's not going to get a change of venue. What keeps Donald Trump out of federal prison? Winning the presidency. That's it. That's the only hope that he has. Because if he wins, of course, he can fire everyone at DOJ. All the cases could go away. Outside of that, I don't see any relief that he can get, because it won't happen. Now, I will say I'm very impressed with the judge in the classified documents case. Aileen Cannon, people can read about what she's doing in court. She's really the only judge I've seen hold DOJ's feet to the fire and continues to do so. So I think he's got a much better chance of a fair proceeding and fair jury there. But Washington, D.C., forget it. And Jesse, they've created this bloodlust on the Democratic Party base to get Donald Trump behind bars. Mm-hmm. And they're going to do it one way or the other. Golly, Julie, thank you. Twice in 1 week. I won't ask you again. Well, probably till next week. Thank you. You're welcome. Thanks.